Vincent Ashford built a $2.3 billion delivery empire from nothing. His company Fast Track Delivery handled 200,000 packages daily across 15 states. Everything seemed perfect until the complaints started flooding in. Missing packages, stolen deliveries, customers crying about lost medicine and vanished Christmas presents. Vincent tried everything to fix the problem. New security cameras, GPS tracking, performance reviews. Nothing worked. The thefts were getting worse by the day. His company rating dropped from 4.8 stars to 2.1 stars in just 6 months. The FBI started asking questions. Insurance companies threatened to drop coverage. Then came the phone call that changed everything. An 82-year-old diabetic widow called crying. Her life-saving insulin worth $400 had vanished. She was rationing her remaining doses just to survive. Vincent made a decision that would shock everyone. He would go undercover as a regular delivery driver to find out what was really happening inside his own company. He grew a beard, darkened his hair, and became Tony Martinez, a construction worker looking for work. What Vincent discovered in just 3 days would destroy everything he thought he knew about his employees. The corruption was deeper than he ever imagined. The crimes were more systematic than he feared. And the victims were chosen for reasons that would make your blood run cold. This billionaire thought he was saving his company. Instead, he uncovered a criminal conspiracy so twisted, so cruel, and so organized that it would force him to fire every single person involved and rebuild from scratch. Vincent Ashford sat in his 47th floor office, staring down at the city below. At 45, he owned the fastest-growing delivery empire in America. Fast Track Delivery was worth $2.3 billion, handling over 200,000 packages daily across 15 states. But Vincent had a problem that was about to destroy everything he had built. The complaints were flooding in. Thousands of them. Missing packages, delayed deliveries, customers screaming about lost Christmas gifts, medical supplies that never arrived, birthday presents vanishing into thin air. The company's rating had dropped from 4.8 stars to 2.1 stars in just 6 months. Vincent had tried everything. New security cameras, GPS tracking, performance reviews. Nothing worked. The thefts were getting worse, not better. His board of directors was breathing down his neck. Insurance companies were threatening to drop coverage. The FBI had started asking questions about potential mail fraud. That morning, Vincent received a call that changed everything. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, an 82-year-old widow from Detroit, called crying. Her diabetes medication worth $400 had disappeared. The pharmacy said it was delivered. The driver marked it as complete. But Eleanor never received it. She was rationing her remaining insulin, cutting doses in half just to survive until she could afford another shipment. Vincent hung up the phone and made a decision that would shock everyone around him. He was going undercover as a delivery driver to find out what was really happening to his company. 3 days later, Vincent Ashford ceased to exist. In his place stood Tony Martinez, a 45-year-old construction worker looking for steady employment. Vincent had grown a beard, darkened his hair, and practiced a slight accent. He wore faded jeans, work boots, and a flannel shirt that smelled like cigarettes. His expensive watch was replaced with a $20 Casio. His manicured hands were now rough and calloused, thanks to sandpaper and fake dirt. The transformation was complete. Even his own mother would not recognize him. Vincent applied for a driver position at his own company's downtown depot. The facility handled the highest volume of packages in the network, processing over 15,000 deliveries daily. It was also where most of the complaints originated from. On Monday morning, Tony Martinez walked through the doors of Fast Track Delivery for his first day of training. The warehouse was massive, stretching over 100,000 square feet. Conveyor belts snaked through the building like mechanical rivers, carrying thousands of packages toward loading docks. The sound was deafening. Beeping scanners, rumbling trucks, workers shouting over the noise. Vincent had visited this facility dozens of times as the owner, but always with advance notice. The staff would clean up, put on their best behavior, show him sanitized reports. Now he was seeing it through the eyes of a regular employee. What he discovered made his blood run cold. Jake Thompson, the 38-year-old warehouse supervisor, ran orientation for new drivers. Jake was built like a linebacker, with arms covered in tattoos and a permanent sneer on his face. He had worked for Fast Track for 8 years, climbing from package handler to supervisor. On paper, his numbers looked decent. In person, he was something else entirely. Listen up, rookies. Jake barked at the group of 12 new hires. This job ain't for everyone. Half of you will quit within a month. The other half will wish they had. We move fast here. No time for crybabies or heroes. Jake walked them through the warehouse, pointing out different sections. The sorting area where packages were organized by route. The loading docks where trucks were packed. The break room where drivers grabbed coffee before heading out. Everything looked normal on the surface. But Vincent noticed details others missed. Security cameras had convenient blind spots near the loading docks. Certain packages were set aside in unmarked areas. Jake kept checking his phone, sending quick text messages throughout the tour. Now here's the most important rule, Jake continued, stopping near a wall of metal lockers. What happens in this warehouse stays in this warehouse. We're a family here. We look out for each other. Anyone who causes problems for the family gets dealt with. Understand? The new hires nodded nervously. Vincent felt a chill run down his spine. This was not the company culture he had created. This was something darker. After orientation, Vincent was assigned to Route 47, covering the south side of the city. His trainer was Ashley Miller, a 29-year-old driver with blonde hair and cold blue eyes. Ashley had been with the company for 3 years and was considered one of the top performers. Her delivery success rate was 98.7%, well above company average. "So you're the new guy," Ashley said, looking Vincent up and down with suspicion. "Jake says you have construction experience." "That's good. This job requires muscle sometimes." They climbed into delivery truck 447, a white van with the Fast Track logo on the sides. Ashley drove while Vincent rode shotgun, learning the route. The truck was loaded with 180 packages, everything from small envelopes to large boxes marked fragile. "First thing you need to know," Ashley said as they pulled out of the warehouse, "is that not all deliveries are equal. Some packages are more important than others. Jake will teach you which ones to prioritize." Vincent asked what she meant by prioritize. Ashley smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. "You'll learn soon enough, Tony. Just remember what Jake said about family. We take care of our own here." Their first stop was a luxury apartment complex in the financial district. Ashley grabbed 3 packages from the back of the truck, all addressed to residents of the building. But instead of walking to the front door, she made a phone call. "Yeah, it's me," she said into her phone. "I have 3 items from the tower. 2 electronics, 1 jewelry box. The jewelry is from Tiffany." She paused, listening. "Okay, I'll bring them by later." Vincent watched in shock as Ashley threw all 3 packages back into the truck. She then pulled out her scanner and marked them as delivered successfully. The GPS showed they were at the correct address. The timestamp showed the current time, but the packages never left the truck. "What are you doing?" Vincent asked, trying to keep his voice casual. "Business," Ashley replied. "Those rich jerks in there won't even notice for days. When they do complain, we'll say the packages were stolen from their lobby. Happens all the time in buildings like this." Vincent's heart was racing. He was witnessing systematic theft by his own employees. But this was just the beginning. Their next stop revealed the true scope of the operation. Ashley drove to a strip mall on the other side of town, parking behind a store called Second Chance Electronics. The sign advertised discount phones, tablets, and computers. Ashley grabbed the 3 stolen packages and walked inside. Vincent followed, claiming he needed to use the bathroom. Through a crack in the back office door, he saw Ashley talking to a woman with red hair. Money changed hands. The packages were opened, revealing an iPad, wireless headphones, and a diamond necklace. The woman examined each item and nodded approvingly. "Tell Jake these are perfect," the red-haired woman said. "High value, easy to move. My buyers in Miami will take all of this." Vincent's mind was reeling. This was not random theft. This was an organized crime ring operating inside his own company. The employees were not just stealing packages. They were running a sophisticated black market operation, selling stolen goods to buyers in other states. When Ashley returned to the truck, Vincent asked about the woman in the store. "That's Natasha Reed," Ashley said. "She's Jake's girlfriend. Runs the electronics store. She helps us move merchandise that's too hot to sell locally." Vincent was beginning to understand the full scope of the conspiracy. Jake Thompson was the ringleader, using his position as supervisor to coordinate thefts. Ashley and other drivers were the foot soldiers, stealing packages and delivering them to Natasha's store. From there, the stolen goods were sold through a network of black market dealers. But Vincent needed to know more. How many employees were involved? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, what else were they stealing besides electronics? The rest of the day provided disturbing answers. At their third stop, Ashley stole prescription medications from an elderly man's porch. At the fourth stop, she took a package containing insulin supplies. At the fifth stop, she grabbed children's toys that were obviously Christmas presents. Why target medicine and kid stuff? Vincent asked, genuinely sickened by what he was witnessing. Ashley shrugged. Jake says those are the best targets. Poor people and old folks don't fight back. They just accept that their stuff got lost. Rich people will raise hell and demand investigations. We avoid those. Vincent felt bile rising in his throat. These people were not just thieves. They were predators, specifically targeting the most vulnerable members of society. The elderly, the sick, families who could not afford to replace stolen items. As the day continued, Vincent learned more about the operation. There were at least 12 drivers involved in the theft ring. Security guard Douglas Pike was paid to delete surveillance footage. Even some warehouse workers were part of the scheme, setting aside valuable packages for easy theft. The financial scope was staggering. Ashley bragged that the ring had stolen over $800,000 worth of merchandise in the past year alone. They were careful to avoid detection by keeping individual thefts under $500 and targeting customers who were unlikely to complain effectively. But the most disturbing revelation came at the end of the day. As they returned to the warehouse, Ashley pointed to a wall in Jake's office. It was covered with photos and addresses. That's Jake's target board, Ashley explained. He researches customers before we steal from them. Single mothers, disabled veterans, elderly people living alone. He calls it market research. Vincent stared at the wall in horror. There were dozens of photos. Vulnerable people who had trusted fast-track delivery with their most important packages. People like Eleanor Patterson, the diabetic widow who had called Vincent crying about her missing insulin. At that moment, Vincent realized the full extent of what he was dealing with. This was not just employee theft. This was systematic exploitation of the most vulnerable people in society. Jake Thompson and his crew were using Vincent's company as a weapon against people who could not defend themselves. As Vincent walked to his car that evening, his mind was racing. He had uncovered a criminal conspiracy that went far beyond simple package theft. His employees were running an organized crime ring that specifically targeted the elderly, the sick, and the poor. They were stealing medicine from diabetics, toys from children, and necessities from people who could not afford to replace them. The worst part was that Vincent's own company was unknowingly facilitating these crimes. Every stolen package was marked as delivered, protecting the thieves from suspicion. The insurance claims were processed automatically, meaning Fast Track was actually paying for the very packages its employees had stolen. Vincent sat in his car for 20 minutes, trying to process what he had learned. In one day undercover, he had witnessed more corruption than he had imagined possible. Jake Thompson was not just a supervisor. He was a crime boss operating inside Vincent's company. Ashley Miller was not just a driver. She was a predator who laughed about stealing medicine from elderly people. But Vincent knew this was only the beginning. He had seen enough to know the theft ring was much larger and more organized than what he had witnessed in one day. Tomorrow, he would go deeper into their operation. He would learn exactly how extensive the corruption was and who else was involved. As Tony Martinez, he would continue to play the role of a new employee eager to fit in. As Vincent Ashford, he was already planning how to destroy the criminal empire operating inside his own company. The war between Vincent and his corrupt employees was about to begin, and only one side would survive. Vincent arrived at the warehouse the next morning with a knot in his stomach. As Tony Martinez, he had to act like he wanted to be part of Jake's criminal operation. As Vincent Ashford, he was disgusted by everything he had witnessed. But he needed to go deeper to understand the full scope of the conspiracy. Jake Thompson was waiting for him near the loading dock, holding a clipboard and wearing that same predatory smile from the day before. "Tony, my man," Jake said, slapping Vincent on the back. "Ashley says you did good yesterday. Kept your mouth shut, asked the right questions. I like that in a new guy." Vincent forced himself to smile back. "Just trying to learn the ropes, boss. Good attitude. Today you're riding with Mike Johnson." He's going to show you some of our special procedures. Mike Johnson was a 35-year-old driver with dead eyes and a permanent 5 o'clock shadow. He had been with the company for 4 years and was known for having the highest package loss rate in the entire network. What Vincent had not realized until now was that this was not incompetence. It was criminal efficiency. "So you're the construction guy," Mike said as they loaded their truck. "Jake says you might be family material. We'll see about that." Their truck was loaded with 220 packages, more than Vincent had carried the day before. But Mike had a different system for organizing the cargo. He separated packages into 3 categories: regular deliveries, maybes, and definitely. Vincent asked what the categories meant. "Regular deliveries are packages going to people who fight back," Mike explained. "Rich folks, businesses, anyone who might cause trouble. We deliver those normally. Maybes are packages we might take if the opportunity is right. Definitely are packages we're definitely taking." Mike showed Vincent how he determined which category each package fell into. He had a smartphone app that let him look up addresses and cross-reference them with public records. He could see income levels, family status, age demographics, even criminal histories. "This old lady on Maple Street," Mike said, holding up a package containing heart medication. "Eleanor Patterson, 82 years old, lives alone, fixed income. She's called to complain about missing packages before, but she's too weak to do anything about it." Definitely category. Vincent's blood turned to ice. Mike was talking about the same Eleanor Patterson who had called Vincent crying about her missing diabetes medication. The woman whose desperate phone call had started this entire undercover operation. What happens to people like Eleanor when their medicine doesn't arrive? Vincent asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Mike shrugged. "Not my problem. If she can't afford to replace it, maybe she should have planned better. Darwin in action, you know what I mean." Vincent wanted to grab Mike by the throat and shake him. Instead, he nodded and asked more questions about their targeting system. The truth was worse than Vincent had imagined. Jake's operation did not just steal random packages. They had developed a sophisticated profiling system that specifically targeted the most vulnerable people in the city. Single mothers were prime targets because they were too busy to fight lengthy insurance battles. Elderly people were targeted because they often did not understand how to file effective complaints. Disabled veterans were targeted because many suffered from PTSD and avoided confrontational situations. "Jake keeps files on all our best targets," Mike continued. "He calls it the VIP list. People who we can steal from over and over because they won't fight back effectively." Vincent asked to see the VIP list. Mike laughed and said Vincent was not ready for that level of trust yet. But he did share some stories that made Vincent sick to his stomach. "Last month, I stole Christmas presents from this family on Oak Street. Single mom, 3 kids, working 2 jobs just to pay rent. The kids were expecting Santa to bring them toys, but Santa's delivery got redirected to Natasha's store instead. Jake drove by their house on Christmas morning just to see the disappointed looks on those kids' faces. He took pictures." Vincent gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. "He took pictures of disappointed children on Christmas morning?" "Yeah, man. Jake keeps a whole photo album of our greatest hits. Crying old ladies, upset kids, desperate families calling our customer service line. He calls it his trophy collection." The revelation hit Vincent like a physical blow. Jake Thompson was not just stealing packages for money. He was a sadist who enjoyed causing pain to innocent people. The theft was secondary to his real motivation, which was the psychological pleasure he got from destroying lives. Their first stop of the day was a low-income apartment complex where Mike had identified 3 definitely packages. One contained prescription glasses for a legally blind woman. Another contained diabetic supplies for a 16-year-old girl. The third contained baby formula for a single mother who could not afford to buy it at retail prices. Vincent watched in horror as Mike casually tossed all 3 packages back into the truck and marked them as delivered. He then drove to a different part of town where he made phone calls to coordinate the sale of the stolen goods. "Natasha wants the diabetic supplies," Mike said after hanging up. "She's got a buyer in Chicago who specializes in medical equipment. The baby formula will go to a guy in Atlanta who sells it to daycare centers at discount prices." Vincent was witnessing systematic theft of life-sustaining supplies from the people who needed them most. The blind woman would have to wait weeks for replacement glasses, probably falling down stairs or walking into traffic. The diabetic teenager would have to ration her supplies, risking dangerous blood sugar spikes. The baby would go hungry while its mother scrambled to find money for formula. But the worst was yet to come. Their next stop was a pediatric cancer ward at the local children's hospital. Vincent's heart sank as he realized what was about to happen. Mike grabbed a package marked urgent medical supplies and threw it into the back of the truck with the other stolen items. "What's in that package?" Vincent asked, though he was afraid of the answer. Mike checked the label. Chemotherapy drugs for some kid named Tommy Chun. Expensive stuff. Natasha says medical supplies are her best sellers. Vincent felt like he was going to vomit. Jake's theft ring was stealing cancer medication from dying children. They were literally taking life-saving drugs away from kids who would die without them. "What happens to Tommy if he doesn't get his chemotherapy?" Vincent asked. Mike laughed. "Not my problem, man. If his parents can't afford backup medicine, maybe they shouldn't have had kids. Besides, most of these cancer kids die anyway. We're just speeding up the inevitable." Vincent had to excuse himself to throw up behind a dumpster. The casual cruelty was beyond anything he had imagined possible. These people were not just thieves. They were monsters who enjoyed causing suffering to the most innocent victims imaginable. When Vincent returned to the truck, Mike was on the phone with Jake, laughing about something. "Jake wants to show you something special tomorrow," Mike said after hanging up. "He's planning a big score, and he thinks you might be ready to participate." Vincent asked what kind of big score Jake was planning. "There's a delivery going to the children's shelter on Friday. 40 boxes of Christmas presents donated by some charity. Jake wants to intercept the whole shipment and sell it before Christmas. He says it will be the biggest single theft in company history." Vincent's mind was reeling. Jake was planning to steal Christmas presents from orphaned children. 40 boxes of toys and gifts that would never reach kids who had already lost everything. It was beyond evil. It was pure sadism disguised as profit motive. The rest of the day revealed even more disturbing details about Jake's operation. The theft ring had been active for over 2 years, not just the past few months as Vincent had initially thought. They had stolen over $2.8 million worth of goods, specifically targeting victims who could not fight back effectively. Jake kept detailed files on their favorite targets, including photos, addresses, family information, and psychological profiles. He had pictures of elderly people crying on their doorsteps after discovering missing medication. He had photos of children disappointed on Christmas morning when their presents never arrived. He had recordings of desperate phone calls from families begging for help. But the most shocking revelation came when Mike showed Vincent Jake's loser wall in his office. It was a bulletin board covered with photos and personal information about their victims. Each photo was labeled with details about what had been stolen and how the victim had reacted. "Check this out," Mike said, pointing to a photo of an elderly veteran in a wheelchair. "That's Robert Williams, 78 years old, Vietnam vet. We stole his prosthetic leg parts 3 times this year. Each time, he had to crawl around his apartment for weeks waiting for replacements. Jake calls him Stumpy and bets on how long it takes him to get new parts." Vincent stared at the wall in absolute horror. There were dozens of photos. Elderly people, disabled veterans, single mothers, sick children. Each victim was labeled with cruel nicknames and detailed notes about their suffering. One photo showed a young mother holding a crying baby. The label read, "Jennifer Martinez stole her baby formula 4 times. Kid lost 6 pounds from malnutrition. Currently under investigation by Child Services. LOL." Another photo showed an elderly man sitting alone in a hospital bed. The label read, "Frank Rodriguez, cancer patient. Stole his pain medication 6 times. Doctors think he's a drug addict now. Refuses to prescribe replacements. Dying in agony. LMAO." Vincent had to grip the doorframe to keep from collapsing. These people were not just criminals. They were psychopaths who tortured innocent victims for entertainment. The money was secondary to their real motivation, which was the sick pleasure they got from causing maximum suffering to the most vulnerable people possible. As the day continued, Vincent learned about other employees involved in the conspiracy. Security guard Douglas Pike was paid $500 per incident to delete surveillance footage. Warehouse supervisor Lisa Chun helped identify valuable packages and set them aside for easy theft. Even some customer service representatives were involved, dismissing complaints from targeted victims and discouraging them from filing police reports. The operation was far more sophisticated than Vincent had initially realized. Jake had spent months researching victims, identifying their weaknesses, and developing strategies to maximize their suffering. He kept detailed records of each theft, including before and after photos of the victims. The best part, Mike explained, is that we're using the company's own systems against them. Every stolen package gets marked as delivered, so the official records show perfect performance. The insurance claims get processed automatically, so the company actually pays us for the stuff we steal. It's beautiful. Vincent realized that his own company's policies were being used to facilitate the crimes. The automated systems he had implemented to improve efficiency were actually protecting the criminals and covering up their activities. By the end of the second day, Vincent had documented systematic theft, organized crime, insurance fraud, and deliberate targeting of the most vulnerable people in society. But he knew he needed more evidence before he could act. Jake had promised to show him something special the next day, and Vincent suspected it would reveal the full scope of the conspiracy. As Tony Martinez walked to his car that evening, Vincent Ashford was already planning his revenge. These people had turned his company into a weapon against innocent victims. They had stolen from dying children, elderly veterans, and desperate families. They had laughed about causing suffering to people who trusted them. But their laughter was about to stop. Vincent had seen enough to destroy them all, but he wanted to make sure he caught every single person involved. Tomorrow, he would let Jake show him the something special. He would gather the final pieces of evidence he needed. And then he would unleash a reckoning that would destroy every single person who had participated in this evil conspiracy. The monsters hiding inside his company were about to learn what real karma looked like. Vincent barely slept that night. The images from Jake's loser wall kept flashing through his mind. Photos of crying children, desperate elderly people, families destroyed by the systematic cruelty of his own employees. But by morning, Vincent had made his decision. Today would be the last day Jake Thompson and his crew would ever hurt another innocent person. He arrived at the warehouse as Tony Martinez one final time, but Vincent Ashford was already planning their destruction. Jake was waiting by the loading dock, practically bouncing with excitement. His eyes had a manic gleam that made Vincent's skin crawl. "Tony, my friend, today is your lucky day," Jake said, throwing his arm around Vincent's shoulders. "I'm going to show you why I'm the king of this operation. We're going to pull off the biggest score in fast-track history." Vincent forced himself to look interested. What kind of score? Jake led him to a special staging area Vincent had never seen before. Hidden behind stacks of regular packages were 40 large boxes, all marked with the same shipping label. Children's Hope Foundation, Christmas Donation Drive. Vincent's heart stopped. These were the Christmas presents for the children's shelter that Mike had mentioned. 40 boxes of toys, clothes, and gifts donated by generous families to give orphaned kids a Christmas they would never forget. "Check this out," Jake said, tearing open one of the boxes. Inside were dozens of wrapped presents, each one tagged with a child's name and age. Nintendo Switch for Bobby, age 8. Barbie Dream House for Maria, age 6. Art supplies for Kevin, age 10. Jake picked up a small wrapped box labeled for Sarah, age 4. Her first Christmas without mommy and daddy. Vincent watched in horror as Jake shook it like a rattle, then casually tossed it back into the pile. 40 boxes, over 200 presents, street value around $50,000, Jake continued. Natasha already has buyers lined up in 3 different states. By tonight, these toys will be in black market stores from here to Miami. Vincent asked what would happen to the children at the shelter. Jake's smile was pure evil. They'll wake up Christmas morning to empty rooms and broken promises. Just like real life. I'm teaching them early that the world doesn't care about them. Vincent realized he was looking at a genuine sociopath. Jake was not just stealing for money. He was deliberately trying to destroy the Christmas dreams of children who had already lost their parents. The cruelty was the point. But here's the beautiful part, Jake continued. The shelter thinks the packages are being delivered tomorrow. They've already told the kids that Santa is coming. Imagine their little faces when they realize Santa forgot about them. Jake pulled out his phone and showed Vincent photos from previous years. Pictures of children at the same shelter, crying on Christmas morning when promised presents never arrived. Jake had been stealing their Christmas donations for years. "I call this my annual tradition," Jake laughed. "Every December, I make sure these orphan brats learn the truth about the world. Nobody cares about them. Nobody is coming to save them. The sooner they accept that, the better. Vincent had heard enough. These children had already lost their parents. Christmas was supposed to be their one day of hope and joy. Jake was systematically destroying even that small comfort. But Vincent controlled his rage and played his role. Sounds like easy money. When do we move the packages? Right now, Jake said. We're going to load them into your truck and drive them straight to Natasha's warehouse. She's got a crew standing by to sort everything and ship it out before anyone notices. As they began loading the stolen Christmas presents, Vincent was secretly recording everything with a hidden camera he had installed in his jacket. Every box they stole, every cruel comment Jake made, every detail of the operation. But Vincent had planned something Jake could never have anticipated. 3 months earlier, Vincent had quietly hired a team of private investigators to research every complaint filed against his company. Working in secret, they had identified over 300 victims of the theft ring. Vincent had spent $800,000 of his personal money to replace every single stolen item and compensate families for their suffering. Eleanor Patterson, the diabetic widow whose missing insulin had started this investigation, now had a year's supply of medicine paid for by Vincent personally. The single mother whose baby formula was stolen received free formula deliveries for 2 years. The blind woman who lost her prescription glasses received not just replacements, but a complete eye exam and upgraded lenses. Vincent had helped every single victim without revealing his identity. As far as they knew, an anonymous Good Samaritan had stepped in to help. But Vincent had done more than just replace their stolen items. He had given each victim something much more valuable: the phone number of his personal attorney and detailed evidence of the crimes committed against them. Over the past week, while Jake and his crew thought they were untouchable, 300 victims had filed lawsuits against Fast Track Delivery. Each lawsuit contained detailed evidence of the systematic theft ring: security footage, financial records, photos from Jake's loser wall, recorded phone conversations. Jake Thompson had no idea that his entire criminal empire was about to collapse. As they finished loading the stolen Christmas presents, Vincent received a text message. It was the signal he had been waiting for. Everything was in place. Jake, Vincent said, before we drive these packages to Natasha's place, I need to tell you something. Jake looked up from his clipboard. What's that, Tony? Vincent smiled for the first time in 3 days. My name is not Tony Martinez. I'm Vincent Ashford. I own this company. The color drained from Jake's face. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The clipboard fell from his hands and clattered to the concrete floor. That's impossible, Jake whispered. You're just a driver. You're nobody. I'm the billionaire who built this company from nothing, Vincent said, pulling off his fake beard and wig. And you just confessed to stealing Christmas presents from orphan children while I recorded every word. Jake looked around frantically, as if expecting this to be some kind of elaborate prank. But the warehouse was surrounded. FBI agents were walking through every entrance, wearing bulletproof vests and carrying arrest warrants. Vincent Ashford, FBI, the lead agent announced over a megaphone. This facility is under federal investigation for mail fraud, organized theft, and racketeering. Everyone remain where you are. Jake tried to run, but Vincent grabbed his arm. Where are you going, Jake? I thought you wanted to show me your operation. The next hour was pure chaos. Ashley Miller was arrested while trying to flee in a delivery truck full of stolen packages. Mike Johnson was caught attempting to destroy evidence in Jake's office. Douglas Pike, the security guard, was found hiding in a bathroom stall. One by one, every member of the theft ring was arrested and led away in handcuffs. But Vincent was not finished. He called an emergency meeting of all warehouse employees. Over 200 people gathered in the main sorting area, confused and frightened by the FBI raid they had just witnessed. Vincent stood on a platform in front of the crowd, no longer disguised as Tony Martinez. He was Vincent Ashford again, the billionaire owner of Fast Track Delivery, and his employees were about to learn what justice looked like. For the past 3 days, I worked alongside you as Tony Martinez, Vincent began. What I discovered was the most systematic criminal conspiracy I have ever encountered. 12 of your co-workers have been arrested for stealing from the most vulnerable people in our community. Vincent activated a large screen behind him. Photos from Jake's loser wall appeared, showing the faces of every victim the theft ring had targeted. Elderly people, sick children, desperate families, single mothers, disabled veterans. These are the people Jake Thompson and his crew called losers, Vincent continued. A 78-year-old veteran forced to crawl around his apartment because they stole his prosthetic leg parts. A diabetic widow rationing her insulin because they stole her medication. Children who went hungry because they stole baby formula. The crowd was silent, staring at the photos in shock. Many employees had no idea about the theft ring's activities. But some faces in the crowd looked guilty, and Vincent made note of each one. Jake Thompson kept detailed records of every victim, Vincent said, clicking to the next slide. He took photos of crying children on Christmas morning. He recorded elderly people begging for help on customer service calls. He called it his trophy collection. Vincent showed them evidence of the systematic targeting. The databases Jake used to identify vulnerable victims. The cruel nicknames he gave to people whose lives he destroyed. The betting pools where employees wagered on how much suffering they could cause. But here's what Jake Thompson never realized, Vincent said, his voice rising with controlled fury. Every single person he stole from is now suing this company. 300 lawsuits filed simultaneously this morning. Each one contains detailed evidence of his crimes. Vincent clicked to a new slide showing legal documents. Hundreds of them. Each lawsuit demanding justice for victims of the theft ring. Jake thought he was untouchable because he was stealing from people who couldn't fight back, Vincent continued. What he didn't know is that I personally replaced every stolen item and hired lawyers for every victim. The elderly widow now has the best legal team in the state. The disabled veteran is represented by military justice advocates. The single mothers have victims' rights organizations fighting for them. The silence in the warehouse was deafening. Vincent could see employees checking their phones, probably receiving calls from lawyers and investigators. The FBI has seized all financial records, Vincent announced. Every stolen package has been traced. Every victim has been identified. Every crime has been documented. This is not just about firing a few bad employees. This is about federal prosecution for organized crime. Vincent paused to let that sink in. Then he delivered the final blow. Jake Thompson, Ashley Miller, Mike Johnson, and 9 other employees have been charged with federal racketeering, mail fraud, and conspiracy. They're looking at 8 to 15 years in federal prison. But that's not their biggest problem. Vincent smiled coldly as he clicked to the final slide. Their biggest problem is that every victim they targeted now has my personal guarantee that justice will be served. Jake thought he could steal from people who were too weak to fight back. He was wrong. They have me fighting for them now, and I have resources he could never imagine. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Jake Thompson was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Ashley Miller got 8 years. Mike Johnson received 10 years. Douglas Pike, the security guard, got 6 years for his role in covering up the crimes. But their legal troubles were just the beginning. The civil lawsuits destroyed them financially. Jake lost his house, his car, and every asset he owned. The judgments against him totaled over $2 million, which meant he would be paying victims for the rest of his life. Ashley had to move back in with her parents at age 29, unable to find work anywhere because her criminal record was public. Mike's wife divorced him and took their children to another state. None of them could find decent employment. Word of their crimes spread throughout the delivery industry, and Vincent quietly made sure they were blacklisted from every logistics company in the country. But Vincent's justice went beyond punishment. He transformed the victims' lives. Eleanor Patterson, the diabetic widow, was hired as Vincent's new customer service supervisor at double her previous income. Her medical bills were paid for life, and she moved into a beautiful apartment rent-free. The single mother whose baby formula was stolen became Vincent's new warehouse manager, with a salary that let her quit her second job and spend time with her children. The disabled veteran whose prosthetic parts were stolen received not just replacements, but upgraded equipment and a job consulting on accessibility improvements at fast-track facilities. Every victim of the theft ring received not just compensation, but opportunities. Vincent hired 50 of them as employees, giving them good jobs with full benefits and respect they had never experienced before. The children's shelter received their 40 boxes of Christmas presents, plus an additional 100 boxes donated personally by Vincent. The children had the best Christmas in the shelter's history, never knowing how close they had come to having their dreams destroyed. 6 months later, Vincent received a letter that made everything worthwhile. It was from Tommy Chan, the child whose chemotherapy drugs Jake had stolen. Dear Mr. Vincent, the letter read in crayon. Thank you for firing the bad man who took my medicine. I am getting better now, and the doctors say I might go home soon. My mom says you are a real superhero. Vincent kept that letter on his desk as a reminder of why justice mattered. Fast Track Delivery became the most trusted delivery company in America. Customer satisfaction ratings soared to record levels. Employee morale improved dramatically. The company grew by 400% in the following year as word spread about Vincent's commitment to protecting customers. Jake Thompson's criminal empire was completely destroyed. But more importantly, the victims he had targeted now had better lives than they had ever imagined possible. The people Jake called losers became successful employees, valued customers, and respected members of their communities. The karma was simple and complete. The criminals lost everything. The victims gained everything. And Vincent learned that sometimes the best way to save your company is to destroy the evil hiding inside it. Jake Thompson thought he could steal from people who were too weak to fight back. He was wrong. He just never realized how strong those people could become when someone finally fought for them.